The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Rick, it was only last week that we hosted a dinner in Brussels on fraud and scams, although I can't believe it was only last week because the chaos of Sibos over this week has just made last week seem way in the past. Can you remember what happened, what we discussed at that dinner? You wrote a fantastic blog about it.
It was an interesting one. We discussed scams and how to fight it as a bank. Very interesting, very engaging panel as well. It was the first time I think that we didn't have to pick up the role of moderators because the conversation just kept going. We were more like steering it every once in a while, but overall, we barely had any time to eat.
Yeah, the conversation kept going. The people were very engaged, very passionate about fraud fighting. And there were a couple of sound bites that came out of there. I mean, the one that stood out the most for me was when one of the participants said, a fraud that ends in a payment is not a payment fraud. A lot of the industry says payments fraud are on the rise. And as this person said, most of the frauds start through social engineering, through phishing, through emotional fraud, romance scams and all this. She goes, that's not a payments fraud. It's a fraud that ends in a payment. And I think that it's very important to distinguish that because it's not that the payments process has a problem that can be solved. It's the people really more than anything else. That's the weakest.
I don't think they look at payments as a problem to be solved, but they do look at payments as a solution to prevent the problem, which is, a different way of looking at it. Now, the first evening on Sunday, I arrived at Sibos. I was invited for an inner tribe drink. And the guy next to me, he was also in the fraud and cybersecurity, and it was in, I believe, in psychological cybersecurity. And he said as well, like, main issue with scams, but also with cybersecurity and everything is psychological. We have the technical solutions in place to cover them, but we can't deal with the human being. That's the hardest part. And that's not part of the payments process. That comes way before the process. Why is scams, etc. today such a hot topic is because many stakeholders are pointing at banks to prevent scams from happening because the rails where the harm is done is, of course, in payments. That's how the money is being transferred from victim to the fraudster. I had a call with someone else who's also involved in fraud and AML, etc., who said that until now, most of the emphasis went on AML to prevent financial crime from happening. But today we start a shift, and then instant payments, of course, have to do with it as well. October 9 is getting very close with a new mandate forcing the banks also to adopt the confirmation of pay. It will add another layer on the process, make it hopefully a bit less fraud sensitive, but again, a bit more complex as well.
So I'm going to pick up on two things there. The first one was confirmation of payee. One of the guests brought that up around the table. And somebody else said, but if the fraudster is a confirmed account, you're just confirming that you want to pay the fraudster, because a lot of the time it's, a lady in another country who's saying that her mother needs chemotherapy. So and she had 5,000 euros to pay for the chemotherapy, and it's been a long-developed romance scam. And confirmation of payee won't help with that, because even if the bank phones up the customer and says, are you sure you want to make this payment? The person says, yes, I want to make this payment. I want to save this.
Correct, but if that account is being listed already, I think it allows to reduce the number of fraud cases towards that specific account.
But will it, if that account is in another country, not in the EU, and will it, if that account is held, if that fraudulent activity has been seen at a different bank, because nobody's sharing the data?
Confirmation of pay is not a national solution. It is European. That's already one thing.
But it doesn't cover international. A lot of these scams are coming from Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia.
Right, but Europe International is already a very good coverage, I think. And then I'm sure you were not at the SurePay drink at Sibos, where they also shared that they are actively looking across continents. I mean, they're now looking at, for example, the United States to bring that confirmation of pay. And once you get to that level, it gets quickly, moved to other regions as well, just like instant payments, open banking, etc. It started conversations and the build-up started in Europe, but you had that ripple effect across the world, where sometimes happens across continents. And from that moment on, you start to have the international coverage. Of course, you always have to start somewhere. I think.
But if that person has a genuine bank account, if it is a lady in Vietnam and her bank account is confirmed, how is this going to flag? We suspect this is a fraudulent person.
It only works if that other bank is also part of the scheme, of course, obviously. We'll see. I think it will help reduce the harm. Will it cover everything? No, but that's not, that fraud will never be completely gone. I don't think we need to look for that bulletproof solution. We need to make sure that we can reduce it to the minimum amount possible.
Certainly not just from the banking angle. I mean, somebody else had made the comment, instant payments means instant fraud. Instant payments is something that the fraudsters are going to be taking a window of opportunity to leverage, because the faster the payments happen, the less time there is for the fraud teams to respond and review those transactions. Do you think things like the new stablecoin rails and putting things on the blockchain and everything, is that going to help any of this?
No, because then you're looking at the payment chain again, not the process before or after.
And when it comes to the process before or after, I sat in a session, a really scary session. It was from an ethical hacker. This was at Sibos, called Jamie Woodruff. And I'll have to do a whole blog just on his session, but there were a couple of things. One of the things that he did was to illustrate to a group of cybersecurity specialists the power of social engineering. So what happened, he was invited to present at a forum in front of a whole lot of cybersecurity specialists. And he said, they're the worst because it's their way or the highway, and they all think that they know best on how to protect their organizations. So what he did was, he spoke with the CEO of the organization, and he said, I'm going to do something. I've never done it before. And the event was being held at a big hotel. So he went to the hotel and they gave him a uniform, and he dressed up as a waiter, and he pretended he couldn't speak English, that he was foreign. And he kept quiet. He was in his waiter, and he went round for the whole of the morning during the coffee breaks, and he was serving the coffees, lunchtime and everything like that. And in the afternoon, when it comes to doing the session, he goes walking towards the stage with his tray of coffees, and the people are telling him, get out, what are you doing? We're waiting for Jamie Woodruff. And he puts down the tray of coffee and he says, I am Jamie Woodruff, and let me tell you what I know about you people here. And he put up the screen with a whole lot of confidential information that the people had been sharing, just talking, while he moved invisibly in between them. And he said, you're all compromised. And he said, it's too late. I've already compromised your systems, and here is the proof. He said, because all of you, social engineering, this is the way it works. You all think that you're a cybersecurity specialist, and look what I've just done with you. So that was, wow, a room full of cybersecurity specialists that got hacked by somebody just pretending to be invisible. And he went on with a whole lot of other examples. Something that also came out, so our partner for the evening, XTN Cognitive Security, had brought us awareness of what they called shell game malware, which is malware that gets installed on a mobile phone and then moves money between your primary bank accounts in the background without you knowing. And then from the bank's perspective, these look like legitimate transactions.
Yep.
And typically they'll move from your primary bank account at a legacy bank where it's got very tight controls, and they'll move it into a fintech where it's got perhaps not so tight controls. And then from the fintech, they'll push it into a crypto wallet or something like that. And it all looks like genuine transactions. And I'm sitting there going, I'm safe. I won't get malware on my phone. Well, this ethical hacker showed us how easy it was.
Oh, really?
He put up an X-ray of his hands, and he's got NFC chips implanted in both hands. Okay. And I'd seen this technology many years ago at an event in Berlin where they were offering free NFC chip implanting. I didn't have it done. I'm too much of a baby. I rather use my ring, which is NFC. But he's got these NFC chips, and he says he's had them in his hands for 6 years. He's traveled globally through airports, and not once has he ever been questioned about them.
Mhm.
And he said, never pass me your Android phone to my left hand. He said, because when I switch it on, that NFC chip will instantly install malware if I hold your phone for a couple of seconds.
No.
All that he needs is an unlocked phone.
Unlocked phone. There we go.
Unlocked. It has to be unlocked. It can't be locked. But if you hand him your unlocked phone and you say, here, have a look at these photos, boom, he's installed malware. That is some scary stuff. That's how easy somebody can be hacked. Social engineering, meet an employee, start chatting to them during a smoke break, strike up a conversation about their dog and say, oh, have you got any photos of your dog? Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, let me see your phone. Boom. Compromised. Once the malware's on there, it's done. That kind of a thing is not a problem banks can solve alone, although there are, XTN I know that they've got solutions in place for this, but this is where it starts getting really scary in the world of fraud.
It starts getting really scary, but there are also solutions to make sure that we can detect that malware one way or another.
Yes.
One of those was, for example, behavioral detection systems that detect certain patterns on how you would initiate a transfer. And that way the bank could compare that with, for example, an agent that does it or a malware that does it, which takes place in less than a second, maybe, compared to a human, which takes multiple seconds.
Yeah.
I also had a chance to host a panel or moderate a panel on quantum computing at Sibos. Don't ask me how it works, but I do know the moment it works, we are getting in a whole new frontier of cybersecurity. And those scams we talked about is all the intersection of human behavior and cybersecurity, making sure that we can trust the machine, but also that we can trust the people using the machine. But what happens if we start having new computers that completely disrupt the way our communication works today?
Break our encryption.
Yeah, what's fascinating there is that we know it's probably coming, but we don't know when we'll have a device capable of doing that at scale.
That was interesting to me. So from all the hype that I've seen, and the topic around quantum has been rising, but there was really a lot of quantum content at Sibos this time. One of the most fascinating sessions for me was Andrea Morello, who explained in simple terms the mathematics, vector mathematics behind quantum computing. And by the end of it, I almost followed. It was right at the last bit that I went, okay, now he's just lost me. But I got to the point where he explained the concept of quantum entanglement, and the penny finally dropped, and I went, fabulous. I now understand theoretically and the concept.
Can you explain again?
I've got the pictures. I can explain with pictures. But it was really a fascinating session and one of many around quantum. But the surprise to me is with all of the hype, I really thought that there is in an existence a working quantum computer already. But attending your panel, I discovered that that's actually not the case. It's all still theory. So while people are saying, you can trial this quantum and you
can trial it,
but it's hybrid at the moment. You need a.
But it will always be hybrid. That was also one of the conclusions. It will always be hybrid. But the thing is that, quantum computers have a different way of calculating things. And that always will require data, and you will end up with an output. But quantum computers are not the future computer. It's just another computer like we have massive data warehouses and every other thing. We'll have regular computers connecting with that quantum computer. That's the idea of hybridly working with them. And that already works today, and that will be the same in the future when we start doing that at scale. Big difference is that today these computers are not strong enough. They don't have enough entanglements to make sure that you can use that at scale. So it's still proof of concept. It was very fascinating to see two people, academics, specialized in the whole algorithms, building algorithms for quantum computers, who both shared that currently we don't have any quantum computer with a quantum advantage.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the quantum computers that we have today, they are there, but they don't have the capabilities yet to compete with a regular computer for their calculations.
Or to put it differently, the humans haven't yet figured out how to write the algorithms that can use the quantum maths to the
No.
No?
We have the algorithms, but we don't have the computers to calculate those algorithms.
Interesting. But timeline-wise, of course, everybody is saying you cannot put off thinking about becoming quantum safe. You have to think of anything, any standard previous historical encryption that you have been using will be able to be decoded, deciphered by a quantum computer. And while initially a lot of those projections were by 2035, so in other words, a 10-year time horizon, I heard a few panel members saying they predict it's going to be a bit earlier than that. Maybe
No, they never predicted. They just
not predict, but saying
estimate it could be earlier. It could be.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Maybe a dodgy government somewhere or a spooky firm is building a quantum computer with us knowing. They're not all as vocal about it as an IBM is. We just don't know. And maybe an organization will be much sooner. Last week, there was an announcement from Caltech, I think, who announced they had a quantum computer with 6,100 qubits, which to me and the guy from Swift, who I was responsible for that track, found pretty amazing. But then we asked the academics and they said, yeah, but it's useless because there's no entanglement yet. So you don't know how that evolves. And that was a key message from those people. We can make predictions of when we will get there, but we will never know for sure until it happens.
So I think that we're going to have a separate session completely about quantum and get in.
And maybe with a quantum expert.
I was going to say, get some quantum experts to stop voicing their opinions, because clearly there is a direct link between fraud and quantum from a cybersecurity perspective.
And maybe we should reach out to Andrea Morello, who was great. Yeah.
I think and there were a couple of people on there that I just thought this is fantastic. So we'll rather keep that for another episode. And once we've written up some of our quantum thinking from Sibos, and with that, I think we can bring this week's episode to a close, unless you've got any other further insights around fraud and scams based on what happened at our dinner or over the last week.
Not at this stage. Maybe a call to everyone listening. If you know why the company in Netherlands, Transactie Monitoring Nederland, had to shut down because of regulation, please let us know, because one of the key messages was that the banks would like more collaboration, but we know out of experience or out of reading the press that it's not always that easy, because you have conflicting regulations and silos also there that prevent us from doing so.
There were a couple of organizations that I met in stands across Sibos who were talking about their solutions to share information without sharing information. And perhaps we'll have to get one of them on a call just to be able to see what it is and to hear what it is that they do, and how they may be able to share fraud information about potential fraud and fraudulent accounts within the constructs of our current regulation and policies.
Yeah. All right.